Well, today I'm going to try my hand at a new bird design, and I'm going to give most of the credit to Nordic Wood Turning, I think is the page. I saw that he did a solid walnut type bird, and then he hung it on like a ring. And so I'm kind of putting my own spin on this. I'm taking just a piece of firewood here because firewood you can normally get cheap. It's free normally. So I just got something that I've had drying for, a year or so. And just right now I'm using a bowl gouge here. I start out using a bowl gouge just to try to not dull my detail gouge because I'm kind of lazy and don't want to go to the sharpening grinder that often. So a lot of times I'll use a bowl gouge just to remove some waste. You can use whatever tools you want. Now I'm just trying to get the shape here with a detail gouge. This is all just imagination, so I'll turn it off. I like to look at that bark and kind of see how much bark is remaining. So this is all just up to the eye. I mean, you're going to have your own aesthetic, artistic ability, what you think looks good. So I really had nothing pre-planned here. This is my first attempt trying this out. So just trying to make that somewhat of a round ball. And I forget if this is the beak or the tail. I think this is the beak. So I think this is going to be the head of the bird. So just a little bit of sanding. On spindle turning like this, you don't have to be perfect with your turning. I mean, you can be to where you don't have to sand at all. But if you're not perfect, you can just sand, and because you're not sanding in grain, it's pretty easy to sand fairly quickly. So you don't have to spend minutes sanding. I mean, you spend 30 seconds to a minute normally, and that will be good enough for these spindle turning projects. Now I'm just getting this pretty close to round, and then I'll part that off. We'll deal with that later. So that's going to be the head of the bird. And then I put another piece of wood in here that's just a little bit bigger. So same type of wood, I believe, but just a little bit bigger chunk. Just getting it round here with the roughing gouge and removing some waste. This is going to be the tail. So I'm just removing a lot of waste quick, and I find that this roughing gouge, I've gotten pretty good with it. So it works really good, and it has a lot of surface, so I can work with that roughing gouge on a lot of projects without having to go resharpen it. So again, I'm a little lazy sometimes, and so that works pretty good. Here I'm just defining where I kind of want the end of the body to go. So the tail would be to your right, and then the front of the bird's body is going to be right here to the left. So now I'm using a detail gouge, just trying to get this round, similar to before, except instead of a beak, you are going to have a really long tail here. And again, you can try these with short tails, with longer tails, with fatter tails, with skinnier tails. I mean, really, there's nobody limiting what you can try. As long as you're willing to make one and then look at it after you're done and be like, yeah, that's ugly. I do that sometimes. I made a snowman yesterday, and it just, when I got done, I took it into the house, and I told my wife, I said, I'm not letting this snowman leave the house. I was embarrassed by how ugly it was. And I've made snowman before that looked really cool. It was just a new design I was trying, and it was a fail. Sometimes you just got to be willing to try things and be willing to fail. And sometimes you'll get a happy little accident, and something will just look really cool that people will like. Hoping people like these new birds. I just took some into a shop, so we'll see. I kind of like them, so I made some birds last year. You can check that video out. I think it's called This Wood's for the Birds or something like that. And I made some birds, and they really sold well, and people really like them. So I'm hoping that this new design is going to be something they like. So here, take your time. Right here is very important. I'm putting the head on the bird, just kind of seeing what I think looks cool. So I have no idea, so I'm trying to decide there, like, where do I want the bottom of this bird? Where do I want the top of this bird? How do I want the head to look? And so I must have wanted a little bit more bark off. So that's why I'm taking just a little bit more of the bark off there. Again, this I'm just fine tuning, and it's all about aesthetics. So depending on the type of wood you have, you know, you're just going to have to play it by ear. I have no dimensions for you. I have no details. It's really just your eyeball looking at it. So I sanded it a little bit there, and I'm going to part this off. We're going to be pretty done. And I will fix this last little piece with a sanding disc here in a second. So you'll see that. So I'm just trying to get it close to where I don't have to sand too much on the sanding disc. And then I'll part this off. And then I will put the sanding disc on. I have a little video shows you how to make this, but really quick, you can just put it in your chuck. Don't have to take the chuck off. Put your sanding disc on. I have a little eraser thing here to remove the dust or the sawdust off of the sanding disc there to free it up. And then you just turn it on here and just try to round that a little bit. Not a lot of pressure. Not a lot of speed either is needed, so it'll burn. You're sanding end grain here, so just take your time, get it close. And then I'll finalize it with a little finer sanding disc, like a handheld. So I'm just trying to round these a little bit. I want to take the time to thank you so much for the support, the comments, the subscriptions. I'm approaching 2,000 subscriptions, which when you start out, you never think is going to happen. So I appreciate it. I hope you're liking some of the content. Now here I'm really taking the time. This is where you really look, how do I want this bird to look? The other guy, the Nordic guy, he left these round and he hung them on a wire. I'm going to actually make these to sit on a table. So I really need to know where the bottom is and where I want the head. So just take a couple minutes there to make sure that you like what you're doing. So now I'm going to sand a flat spot for this to sit on a table. So that's why these sanding discs are pretty cool. This is like 60 or 80 grit sanding disc. You really don't need a fine disc. This is mainly to remove material. So I recommend getting a pretty rough sanding disc. Now I've got where I want this head to go on the body. So I'm just drilling that. And you can make your own little dowels, but I just picked a drill bit that fit one of my dowel rods. It's probably about a 1/4 inch or so piece of dowel rod. Sorry, I got off the camera a little bit there, but put it in the head and then take this off with the little Japanese saw. I think that's a Harbor Freight Japanese saw. It's a cheap one. I can't find a good one. And then put this on, and then if you like it, I like to glue the head into the peg. So I'll put a little bit of glue and put that in the bird head. And then I left the body unglued, and it's a tight fit, so that allows the person that buys it to spin the heads. As you'll see, I'll do some stop motion here, and you can see that you can switch these heads around anytime you want. And you'll see the one there that's got the little eyeball. That's a natural knot in the wood, so I thought that really looked cool. So sometimes you'll get lucky and get a little eyeball or something that just looks really cool. I hope you liked it. Please comment. Let me know what else you'd like to see. Thanks a lot.